Hello and welcome to the video tutorial for making a face. Here I am in a somewhat earlier version of Flash with my home computer. Things might look a little bit different from your studio or your Marymount studio or at-home experience. But what you need to know is that when you start up, open an ActionScript 3 new document. And the assignment requires you to create a 24 frames per second animation that's at 720 by 480 pixels. And in Flash, it's really handy because you can always adjust the size of the composition or the pixel dimensions or the frames per second, the frame rate of the video. And you can do that at any point if you have selected the selection tool and basically don't have any objects selected. The properties inspector will automatically show your overall file properties, like the name of the file and yada yada yada. So I'm going to edit the size. In your version of Flash, you don't even have to hit that edit button. You can just edit this information within the properties palette or properties inspector, whatever you want to call it. So I have over here in the background my selfies. This is the first self-portrait that we used to make the face, and for part 2 of the tutorial, creating the emotional reaction, we'll use this one. So here I have my self-portrait. You know what? The thing about this is you don't even necessarily have to go from your self-portrait. I'm going to allow things to be very simple in this one. The important thing here is to get the movement, and the idea is that if we're constructing a character based upon our own self-portrait, we have some grounding in reality to make our shapes more specific, to ground our animations, our movements in a kind of research-centered sort of observational practice. Anyway, once you bring your face in here, you can change the size by clicking on the Free Transform tool and grabbing one of these anchor points and just scaling down. Once again, you can hover outside of the anchor point at the corner to rotate any object, and hover outside of the one of the sides of the image to skew. When you're scaling, you can hold down Shift key to maintain the proportions. Okay, so I'm just going to put my character off to the side there. For any object you don't want to affect, lock the layer. And this is really handy when you're trying to edit only one feature of your portrait at a time. Just lock the rest of the layers. Super easy. So I'm going to start by creating a bunch of very basic facial features. I'm going to start off with, once again, new layer for each feature, right? And you can combine them together later on if you want to. I'm starting off with a circle to create the head. I'll just adjust this a little bit, but I'm not going to spend all the time I did to prepare the in-class example. I just know the head's a little bit of an egg shape. It's not a perfect circle. It widens a bit by the cheekbones, which are actually around the center of the head, but we'll kind of go with that for now. And remember, if you want to adjust the contours of the shape with the selection tool, you have to make sure that you don't have that object selected. If it's selected, it's not going to give you that editability. You can see that it just wants to allow you to drag the object, whereas if it's unselected, you can just distort it. So there we have that. I'm going to lock this layer as I make it, and maybe I'll name it head, and then I'll create another layer. And let's create some eyeballs and some irises to move on top of the eyeballs. Now you can try to go through that rigmarole that I had you go through, where you create an eye that is its own symbol and animate within the symbol. But you don't have to. If that's still a mystery, then just skip it for now and animate in a timeline. You can see that when I went to make my second circle, the iris, I created a new layer, and then for the fill layer, I just chose a simple gradient from down here at the bottom. Now you can basically you can get to your color pickers from anywhere. There's a lot of different weird color pickers that come up in Flash, which is kind of annoying, but you can go in here by clicking on your fill color, or go up to this palette where you can designate some kind of gradient, like a radial gradient would be what I want for the iris, that radiates out from a center point. So you can mess around with that all you want. Now you can see that I have my iris and my eyeball. Behind it, I'm going to create eyeball, iris. Let's see. I just wonder if I can't dupe the layer. Oh well, whatever. That would be an easy thing, and a nice thing to have in Flash. But what I'm going to do is create 2 new layers. And I'm going to move my iris and my eyeball together, and then I'll just do this. I'll copy this eyeball. You can select all the imagery on in a frame by clicking on the frame. It'll select everything that's in that frame, all the content. And now I'm going to copy. I'm going to go into my new layer and say paste. You can paste in center, paste in place. I'll just paste in center so I don't get too confused. Here's my second eyeball, right here. And now let's copy my iris, second iris, paste in center. There I go. Got 2 irises, got 2 eyeballs, starting off strong. Let's name these things. Yeah, these are duplicate names, but that's all right for now. Now let's add a nose. The nose is going to be. I'm going to start off from a rounded rectangle. You could start off from a circle too, but I'm going to choose a rectangle tool, and then I'm going to enter what comes up. It's contextualized to options that are associated with the tool, and so in this case the options associated with the rectangle tool come up, and I've chosen to round that rectangle. Let's also choose some kind of color. I'll choose a gradient. I'll choose myself a gradient here, like a linear gradient that goes from like a red. I can click on this other color to designate that color. Do you find the color picker confusing, perhaps frustrating? Okay, so now I have a gradient here, and I'm just going to draw out my box-like nose. Did I draw that on a new layer? Oops. I did. I gave it its own layer, so I'll just call this nose. And once again, let's see if I can change this. Yeah, I can actually change the direction of this gradient with the paint bucket tool. How long it takes to get from one color to the next by dragging and dropping a line. I think that this gradient ability only happens, well, no, it looks like you can do it. I think it's a little bit different on your version of Flash. But anyway, give that a try. Adjusting that gradient. The gradient is a nice thing. It can give a real human feel for the thing. Here's a fun thing. I want to actually get rid of that line, but at this stage I don't think I can. I've only selected the fill, and then I pull my fill away. Oh crap, the stroke is left over. I want to just select the stroke, but if I try to select things, I select every layer that's underneath. One way to just select this part that I can't touch, right now I could click on it and I'll select one piece at a time, which is fine, all well and good. But here's another way to do it. I'm going to lock all of my layers, and then I'm just going to unlock the one layer that I want to affect. And now, when I drag and drop to select, it only selects the layer that is unlocked. That's a pretty handy way to just deal with one thing at a time. And so now that I have this, I can deselect it again, and as long as I'm still on the right layer, I can use my selection tool to drag and distort this thing, creating out of it a very nice kind of nose. Whoop. I don't know. This can be whatever. This can be whatever you want it to be. That's something like a nose. I'm saving my project now. Face. There's a gear face. How about that? Because right now I don't think it would be identifiable as me. Let's just test the scene too. See what it's looking like. Okay. Obviously there's no animation yet. Just wanted to make sure I have no major errors at this point. Don't worry about that. That won't happen to you. We have a blank layer that I made by accident. On this, I will add the mouth. We can start off with these basics. I'm gonna, I will hope and expect that you get more into the details, but I want to start off by drawing that with a bigger stroke. The priority here is to get believable movement. So if that comes at the cost of naturalism in the portrait, i.e. simplifying, we're going to live with that. For now, for the sake of this exercise, rather than have you watch me as I spend 10 hours on the portrait, like I did the other day, well, not quite 10, I'm going to actually now, we only have one frame here, and so if you were to leave this frame, say you added, you made the mouth layer last all of 20 frames. If everything else is still at only one frame, it's going to disappear, right? Because they don't exist on frames 2 through 20. And I'm actually going to, I think I'm going to select everything. I'm going to have it exist for 2 seconds. And since we're at 24 frames per second, we're going to go down to 48 seconds. Is that 47 seconds? 48 seconds. Select all the frames just by dragging and dropping, and now right-click, insert frame. Now everything exists the whole way through. And when it gets to the last frame that anything exists on, so quickly, I'm going to create a few simple tweens. I should have eyebrows too, but we'll just go forward with it. Probably should have a hat too. So the easiest one to do in terms of the tweens is to use the motion tween. So we have the eyeball, we have the irises. I'm actually going to, I'm going to work on both irises here. Create a motion tween for this iris, and it's going to say, oh, please turn this into a symbol. And I'll say, okay, what the hell? And it's going to say, for this one, same thing. One thing that we really want to do is have this sort of resting face act as a loop, seamlessly loop. So try to do this. Go to the very last frame, and you want to create a new keyframe where it sits, or in the same position. I'll say that. So you can either do this, where you don't want to select the whole thing, you want to select one frame. Sometimes it won't let you do that. But if you're having trouble selecting your frame in the timeline, you can also just move the eyeball back place. So it's more or less where you began. I can also move it like it's a tiny distance by hitting the arrow keys, left and right, up and down. So now it's close enough, right? This isn't rocket science here. So I'm also going to move this one a little direction. So now when it gets to the end point, it's going to basically be back where we started, and so the face will loop. It'll look as if it's just continuing on forever rather than having this jarring skip as the facial features jump from one pose to another. So for our purposes, we'll kind of like roll our eyes And let's see, can I drag both of these frames at once? I actually held Command and clicked on both frame, a second frame, so that both are highlighted. Let's see if I can make the motion tween happen to both eyeballs simultaneously. So now I have them rolling up and then going back down. Not so interesting. And if I'm unhappy with my frames, I can always just remove tween. I can clear a keyframe, start from scratch again. So I'm not going to do it, but I think I'm going to change their position here a little bit later on. I kind of want it to roll up a little faster. So I'm going to, again, select both frames. I'm going to have them roll up here. And then by the time it gets here, I'll do a circle around. I can do one at a time if I want to. Maybe they'll just roll around all the way to the bottom. And if you want to actually take a look at what all the transitional frames look like in between one state and another, you can click on the onion skinning, one of these down here. There are different kinds of onion skins. Some look like just outlines, and some look like, a lighter version of the object. But you can kind of see where it's traveling to. Not all that interesting, but it's a start. Maybe what we'll do, we're here. Let's turn off onion skinning. This is confusing me. We're here. Why don't we dart the eyes back? Like he's a little bit nervous. And maybe we hold them in place for a couple frames. And you generally want them moving together more or less. So that's a little bit of a nervous darting eye that looks around. Then we can test the whole thing in a moment here. Okay, so we have one part animated. Not great. Something we work on over the course of days and weeks and months and years. So we put a lot of care into this animation. So let's create a different kind of tween. Let's create a shape tween for the mouth. Now with a shape tween, you can't just move things. To create a new keyframe, you actually have to tell it, please create for me a new keyframe. So you got onto a frame and you convert to keyframe. And let's do the same thing where we create a keyframe that's at the final frame of the movie, so that it loops seamlessly. But here in the middle, we'll just do a kind of slight adjustment here. We want to make sure we're in the right frame. Oh yeah, we have to create a new, convert to keyframe to be able to actually make adjustments. And we had to deselect it as well. It's a lot of little annoying steps. But once you get there, as long as you're working with only one object on your frame, you can maybe just a slight change in the shape of the mouth, because we're, as you can tell from all my yapping, we're always moving our mouths in little ways. You know, maybe a little bit of a hint of a smile. It's not too bad. Oh, now I just want to start adding more and more and more. What's fun is maybe I can even change the shape of the head a little bit when the mouth moves. We're definitely going to do that later on. Let's do a shape tween for the head. It's not going to be much, but it'll give the feeling of life and some of the material in the head. Convert to keyframe. Convert to keyframe. Oh no, we had everything selected. We don't want to convert everything to keyframe. We could. It wouldn't ruin anything, but I mean, you know, if you really want to, you can do it. Let's see. Why don't we close the mouth? Maybe there's like a little bit when you clench your jaw. Maybe things expand a little bit. Oops. Forget to make a keyframe. Let's make a keyframe. Not insert blank keyframe. Let's convert to keyframe. And if you aren't liking the way that your shape is moving, you can actually use this subselection tool and really see where the pieces are, where the points are that make up the shape. And you can kind of adjust the angle that everything's moving at. Let's just do something like that. I don't know what it's going to look like exactly, but it's as if we're just modifying the shape of the mouth a little bit. I'm going to undo that. What is that going to look like? Yeah, when you open your mouth, or when you make kind of an O shape with your mouth, the cheeks kind of cave in a little. The face gets a little narrower. So, you know, so things to think about, to observe in the mirror as you, even if your portrait isn't totally lifelike, you can suggest the underlying musculature and the skin and bone materials that comprise the form. Even if it's a cartoon, this gives a kind of palpable feel, a naturalistic feeling to the whole thing. So anyway, that's a beginning. That can be our sort of neutral or resting face. Okay, so that's that. I would then go to fill in the eyebrows, the hat. Maybe the eye motions are a little too extreme for some kind of resting pose. It could just be something where there's a slow creep of the eyes from one side to the other, or just, you know, very little movement with the eyes is maybe more appropriate for this. But there you have it. On to tutorial number 2.